We are back on the track, and a lot has happened since we last spoke of. Sadly, in the motorcycle community, we lost a legend, one Mr. Malcolm Smith. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bummer that, anybody leaves this world, and anybody, especially with somebody with the credentials as Malcolm Smith, and what he's done in the sport. I mean, dude, he's transformed it, he's supported it, competed in it. You know what I mean? So he's been a big name, big legend in the sport, but this is life, and we all get to an age where we don't go any farther, and that's just where he hit the finish line, man. Hit the finish line. And so props to him for what he's done in his life in the sport, and props to him for being able to live a long, successful, healthy life and make it through motocross. So it is what it is, I guess.
My thoughts on Malcolm are he's done an amazing thing for the community of Baja. He was a very big person down in Baja, did a lot for the local residents of Baja. He's been great for especially outdoor, enduro riding and outdoor racing, and his involvement with the Baja 500 and the Baja 1000.
Yeah, he's at a motorcycle shop. He started a motorcycle a gear company.
Yeah,
so he's done a lot.
He's one of those people we have to look at and go, wow, he really has moved the sport and moved everything that we've done in a really positive direction. So he will be missed in that level.
Yeah.
And not to mention the fact that if you like a Husqvarna, you wouldn't have known about Husqvarna if it wasn't in the United States, if it wasn't for Malcolm Smith.
That is true.
So, in other news, we can also talk about W.S.X World Supercross.
Yeah, it just finished. I didn't
finished.
I was blown away that they had a race during the week. Yeah, so it's done. I guess Eli won it, and that's of course. And I haven't watched the race, so I don't know what transpired that way, but. Yeah, it looked pretty cool in Abu Dhabi. And
1, 2, and 3 were interesting on the podium on that because number 1, obviously, you had Eli.
Yeah.
Number 2, you had Ken Roczen. Okay, makes a little sense. Joey Savacci.
Yeah, he's been on it, huh?
The
last Australian Supercross too. I mean, he beat those guys.
Yeah.
He beat Jet Lawrence. Dude. He's riding. Once he got onto that Honda, it just seems like things really took off, and maybe it's a little bit of that not having as much pressure as the American Supercrosses were, because there's been people that have always, when they went to Europe or went to overseas and did Supercrosses, they did really good. Like Larry Ward was one of those guys that just dominated over there because it wasn't as much pressure maybe, this and that. But then you come to the States and kind of struggles a little bit more. So I think Savacci maybe not having that big pressure, being able to race, these smaller events and stuff has gave him a little bit of a spark. But yeah, man, he's riding really, really good. And Cooper Webb was riding really well also.
Coop did very well, but he got in a wreck.
Yeah, I got a little crash, but I think he's good, And but he was riding really well. Of course, Jet riding well, and Eli's riding well. But again, it's getting close to the season, but it's still not the season. And so you can't really go off that, this person's riding this good and that person's riding that good at this point right now because we're still not at the season. In these races, they mean something, but they don't mean anything.
I was going to say, what are your thoughts on what you've seen in World Supercross versus what you think will happen in Supercross here?
Well, again, there's only a few guys in World Supercross, so you can't say that these guys are dominating and these guys are going to be this because there's not 15 guys, there's only 3, right? So you get a bad start, you get a 5th place start. Supercross, you get a bad start, you get a 12th place start because there's that many better riders. Will these guys be the top of the class? Of course. Eli's going to be there, Jet's going to be there, Hunter will be there, Cooper will be there. All these guys will be there. Is anybody going to dominate? I don't think anybody's going to dominate. The only person that might throw off a couple wins in a row would be Jet, just because he can. And but yeah, I just think it's going to be another very, very close year, another very close, a lot of good racing. And but it's just good to see everybody on top of their game, everybody healthy, and seeing everybody kind of go out of the norm to keep that sharpness, to keep that race fitness, to keep that, I guess, that involvement in the sport by doing these overseas races. And I think it's good. It's good. You don't need to sit down and do all this training and kind of just keep this fitness and this momentum going. And then also the best way to test is by racing.
Yeah.
So you can test a little bit, then you race. Test a little bit, race. Test a little bit, race. Instead of going to Anaheim just testing the whole time to get to Anaheim, like, oh shit, I made the wrong decision. I made the wrong setup. So
one of the things I noticed about especially the Abu Dhabi track, because I kind of paid attention to it, is it reminded me a lot more of an arena cross track than it did a traditional supercross track. It was much tighter. The cornering was much tighter. And whereas Supercross, they've gotten into these larger sweeping corners, and it's a little bit faster paced. It seemed that the Abu Dhabi race was really tight.
It seemed like the stadium was big. Looked like the track was kind of big, went out and came about. But maybe they just condensed it where it's, much more 180s type of things. And, that allows maybe more passing sometimes just because people aren't going as fast in the corners and coming out. Because those high sweeper corners, it's hard to want to be putting your front end into somebody or get up next to somebody when they're ripping around it in third gear. These tighter ones, you come more to a pause, more to a stop, so you can come in and block them a little bit or even bump them because it's slowing down the pace.
What are your feelings on that as far as from a riding perspective and from a rider's perspective? What are your thoughts on a tighter track versus a more open track?
I guess it just depends on the layout. If the layout's cool, a tight track is fun. If the layout isn't good, then it can be just a one-liner. Fast track can be the same thing. It can be fast where you can have a lot of good passing areas, or it's just so fast and kind of easy that you're just following the leader. And then also it's what kind of day you have it, right? It's what kind of day you have it. It doesn't matter. It could be the best track on earth. If you're having a bad day, you're going to feel like shit. So for me, it wasn't really an issue. I like the tracks that are probably a little bit faster. That would work for me. Faster tracks, rougher tracks, type of things. That would always work for me. But we did get them in all of them,